Hi everyone, David Aragona and Mike Beer here, taking a look at the DRF Friday race of the day. It is the Grade 1 Maker's Mark Mile at Keeneland, going the 1 mile distance on the turf course, race 9 on their Friday card. And Mike, we've got a field of 9 runners signed on for this race that, of course, is led by the morning line favorite, the number 6, Carl Spackler. This Maker's Mark in the past few years is a race that has attracted some shippers from Europe, some Charlie Appleby runners. Not the case this year, and I think the complexion of this field does make Carl Spackler squarely the horse to beat as he comes back off a layoff.
Yeah, I feel like this race tends to come up a little stronger than this one did. But you do have Carl Spackler, who's obviously a legit turf miler, that's for sure. And then you have a couple of other horses. There's some newly turned 4-year-olds who could improve in this race, David. And maybe a horse like Integration too always feels like he's had that potential to break through. Maybe he'll do it here.
With this being the DRF race of the day, do note you can get free past performances for this race. Just head on over to the DRF website, make a free account, visit that race of the day page, and you'll get free past performances for every single race of the day, all 7 days of the week. This one, race 9 at Keeneland on Friday. Mike, let's check out the Timeform US pace projector for this race. And I see plenty of speed in here. I mean, Northern Invader is shown a little bit ahead of the others. They're going to have to get pretty aggressive with him if they want to make the front, though, because you've got to imagine Fantastic Again is going to be fresh off the layoff. You've got Silent Heart, who's shown a lot of early speed in his races down south. Even on the outside, Seminole Chief has been using tactical speed to his advantage in recent starts. You've got some bigger prices in the middle of the field that could go forward. So it's pretty easy to see this pace heating up on the front end.
Yeah, I agree with that. When I first went through it, I wasn't so sure. And then when I went back through it after I saw the pace projector, I was like, you know what? That's absolutely correct. This pace could really get heated up in here. I mean, I personally don't view Northern Invader as a horse who, has to be on the lead. He was off the layoff last time, and he was super fresh early in that Tampa Bay race. It probably went a little too fast that day. But listen, he's going to go forward in this race. And you mentioned some of those horses towards the middle. I mean, the 5, Santorini, is going to be maybe the longest shot on the board, but that horse just looks like a horse who's going forward in here, no matter what.
Yeah, it does feel like that is a horse that could be on ascend, and that could mess up the plans for some others, some of the more fancied runners who do want to be forward in this race. As we get into the discussion of the main contenders, Mike, we should also probably mention potential turf conditions for Friday. There is more rain predicted Thursday into Friday, and then even more through the day and Friday into Saturday. So we'll see how this turf course holds up. But we're recording this on Tuesday. We saw one turf stakes take place on Monday after all of that rain last week, and the course seemed in pretty good condition. So maybe the Keeneland course can stand up to a little bit of rain. Let's go through this field in post position order, beginning with the number 1, the Integration. And he is definitely one of the major players coming in to this Maker's Mark Mile as he's turning back in distance after trying the 1.125 in the Pegasus World Cup turf that we're taking a look at here. And Mike, you could make the case that maybe he struck the front a little bit sooner than is ideal for a horse like this, who really does run his best races when he's able to be produced late, and he gets run down at the very end by Spirit of St. Louis, who just runs over the top of that field. He's been in pretty good form as of late, and they've tried a variety of distances with him, going all the way out to the marathon distances of 1 3/8, 1.5 2 and 3 back. I personally don't mind him turning back to the flat mile here.
I don't either. I kind of understand what they did last year as a 4-year-old to sort of point towards those longer races. And he obviously showed that he can get a longer distance too. So it's not like it was a bad plan. It felt like they were trying to get to that Kentucky Downs race there that has a $2 million purse, and they took a shot at it. And he didn't get the job done. I don't mind him, like you, I don't mind him cutting back though. And just going back to that race, the replay we just showed there, I mean, initially I was disappointed that he got run down by Spirit of St. Louis. But then when you go back, I mean, I personally, it felt like Dettori, he had a chance to drop over into that first turn there and get this horse a little bit of cover, and he didn't take it. And Integration just got that 3 wide uncovered trip all the way around the track. I actually feel like he ran an underrated race last time, even though he lost.
Yeah, I completely agree. He had no cover in the second half of the race, 3 wide on that second turn, and he's not a horse that has to be that forward in his races. And if this pace really does heat up, he feels like one who would be just fine dropping back and making that one run from last or second to last in the early stages. The number 2 is Fantastic Again, and he is one of those horses who could be involved in the early pace. He certainly was when he ran arguably the best race of his career, finishing second in the Grade 1 Shoemaker Mile at Santa Anita last May, going this same 1 mile distance. That's him striking the lead at the top of the stretch and just gets run over by Johannes. But he battles that horse all the way to the wire, Mike, and we know what Johannes did in the second half of the season, went on to be one of the contenders for the Eclipse Award for Champion Turf Horse and finished second in the Breeders' Cup Mile at the very end of the year. So Fantastic Again has that race to get back to. this is just a horse that we've seen very infrequently on the racetrack since he ran that James W. Murphy about 2 years ago on Preakness Day. He's only run 4 times since then. So I'm not really sure what we're going to get from him coming off the layoff.
Yeah, that's a real concern with this horse. That just can't seem to get any racing out of him. Listen, I guess if you just want to look at him on paper and say if he runs the Shoemaker Mile back, then he's just a major contender in that in this race. And I did think that he ran well there, even though there was never a point to me anyway where it looked like he was winning. But I'll give him credit for being really game in that race. We'll see what we get off the layoff here. He's also a horse. It does feel like he wants to be forward, David. So I wonder if a fast pace really works against him.
I'm interested to get your take, Mike, on the number 3 Trickery, who I'm kind of two minds about his chances here, because on one hand, I think he was pretty opportunistic when he won some major races last year. He got very good trips in races like the Belmont Derby and the Secretariat, and I think he was a little exposed in those last couple of losses at short prices. On the other hand, he does feel like one of the horses that's just going to be just fine, sitting a little further off the pace, making one run. He's done it in the past. A little given the turf course is not supposed to bother him at all, as we saw in the American turf last year. So there are some positives for him. I'm still just not sure how good he is.
I feel like we have the same opinion on this horse. I mean, he was a good 3-year-old turf horse. My take on him last year was I didn't particularly like any of his wins that much. And the losses, I was really disappointed in, like just races where I'm especially the Penn Mile. I know he sort of got involved on the pace that day, but just a race where I just felt like you can't lose that one. I don't know. He was a good 3-year-old, has the chance to really improve as a 4-year-old. Your point's well taken about the trip that he could pull in this race. I didn't like him enough to want to bet him against this field, but I'll be interested to see how much he can improve.
Yeah, I couldn't pull the trigger either. And I do want to mention that he's raced at Keeneland twice, and they've been 2 of the worst performances of his career relative to the form that he's been in otherwise. So sometimes that turf course at Keeneland, it's not to every horse's liking. The number 4 is Grand Aspen, who's going to be one of the bigger prices in this field. And really the most interesting thing about him, Mike, is that a trader like Jonathan Thomas, who typically spots his horses realistically, is taking a shot in this race with a horse that's coming out of a couple of 4th place finishes against Optional Claiming Company out west. It does feel like he's gradually rounding back into form for the Thomas barn, and he is a horse that had showed ability on both surfaces going back for Todd Pletcher early in his career. Just a little tough to trust at this level.
Yeah, I mean, it just looks like he's in too tough right now, unless he's just going to really jump forward now. For Thomas, listen, the pace projector is a good thing for him if they go fast in front of him, because he doesn't have a lot of speed. He'll be sitting at the back of the pack here and trying to make a run, but he doesn't even look like he's close to the best closer in this field.
Another big price is the number 5, Santorini. He's got the opposite kind of running style. He's going to want to be fighting it out towards the front end. We saw him use that style to great effect back when he wired a field over the all-weather surface at Turfway Park, and I thought he was pretty game to battle on for the victory that day after laying down some legitimate fractions. A little bit exposed against Stakes Company last time. He just have to improve a lot stepping back over to the turf course.
Yeah, I think the best thing I can say about him, David, is maybe the best race of his career is the only start here at Keeneland as a 3-year-old when he, came up just short in the Bryan Station. I mean, That's the best race he's ever run, but that's not going to be enough to get me to bet him against this field.
The likely favorite in this race is the number 6, Carl Spackler, launching his 5-year-old campaign, coming back off a layoff for the first start since he was mildly disappointing, finishing 6th in the Breeders' Cup Mile last year. But Mike, let's take a look at his race 2 back in the Turf Mile at Keeneland. I think that's a feather in his cap. He's already a Grade 1 winner going this distance over this turf course. He got a very good trip to get the job done this day, able to be used aggressively from an outside post to take the lead and set moderate fractions. But he was also beating a pretty good field on this occasion, including the eventual Breeders' Cup Mile winner, More Than Looks. Also, his stablemate, Spirit of St. Louis, who went on to win the Pegasus World Cup Turf, another Grade 1 event. So Carl Spackler has definitely kept the best class lines of any of these. He's got a versatile running style. He's just the horse to beat if he's ready off the layoff.
100%. He's been good from the start, but he really upped his game, it felt like, as a 4-year-old. Particularly, I think it sort of started with that 4-star Dave, where he just really took a significant jump forward when he won that race. Perfect trip or not. He got a perfect trip in that race, but he was really impressive winning. And again, that replay we just watched, he got a perfect trip there, just sort of taking control early, but he really ran and was not letting some good horses get to him at the end. He's just a good horse, David. He's the horse to beat. You tend not to worry about Chad off of layoffs like this either. So he's got that going for him. He's a really handy horse too. So if the pace is fast, because that's not going to bother him. It's just a lot to like about him.
And I will just add, he's one of the few in this field that might actually be even a little better with some given the ground. So rain in the forecast is not going to bother Carl Spackler at all. The number 7 is Silent Art, a horse who's come into very good form this winter for trainer Brian Lynch, racing at Gulfstream. He was sprinting on turf earlier in his career, but they stretched him out to these two-turn distances again recently, and he handled it well over the past few months. He was very game last time in that Canadian turf. He got floated out a little bit into the stretch and battled on all the way to the wire with Fort Washington and Major Due to probably are not quite grade 1 caliber competition, but they're still pretty solid graded stakes horses. I feel like this horse just has to prove he can step up against this level, Mike.
Yeah, me too. And I'm not fully convinced he's going to be able to do it. I guess we'll see. Even the two recent losses, his 2 wins are good. And the 2 recent losses, he ran fine in both of those races too. If I'm being honest, I don't love the Canadian turf as a race overall. And not giving him a big excuse there for not getting it done. To me, he just wasn't good enough.
The number 8 Northern Invader, another horse who could be forwardly placed in this race, and he will be if he's as aggressively ridden or as aggressive in his persona as he was on the racetrack of this Tampa Bay Derby that we took, Tampa Bay stakes that we are going to take a look at here, where he was pretty aggressive into that clubhouse turn, opened up, almost was a bit of a runoff on the backstretch. Edwin Gonzalez was trying to get a handle on him, and he gets challenged in the stretch here, Mike, and briefly it looks like these 2 horses are going to go right on by him, but Northern Invader battles on all the way to the wire, can't quite fend off Running B, but he does hold on for second here. I don't mind him turning back to the mile distance. Arguably, a flat mile is best for him. He is a horse that has generally been pretty popular with the bettors all through his career. And I think, in my opinion, he's been a little bit overrated ever since that impressive maiden victory. But maybe that last race is a signal that he's finally putting it all together.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate when I look at him too, because you're right. It felt like when he had that big maiden win first time on turf, it felt like he had a chance to be a real good turf horse, and I don't think that's ever really happened for him. And I it's too bad I hold that opinion of him. I feel like because the race off the layoff last time, it just felt like he was way too fresh. He went way too fast, but he actually ran a really good race. And then you go back to the prior start at Saratoga before the layoff, where he's last from the gate and trailing. As that race, they go 48-4 to the half, David. The second half of that race is 3 full seconds faster, and he's trying to catch 2 really good horses. So off of those 2 performances, I'd like to sort of make a case for him, but he has this whole other resume about him that I just don't really like. And as you put out, he always gets bet in 4-1 that on the morning line. That's just not a price I'd be willing to take on him.
Yeah, not enough of a price for me, and he does feel like a horse that kind of wants to control up front, and we'll see if he's able to get that chance to do so here. The number 9, Seminole Chief, another horse who figures to be forwardly placed in this race. He certainly was last time when he earned his first stakes victory, or I should say second stakes victory, first on the turf in the Appleton. And Mike, this was just 13 days ago, so they're bringing this horse back on pretty short rest, trying to strike while the iron is hot. I felt like he was a little bit opportunistic in this race because you see the horse that's closing into 4th right now. That's Major Dude, who was the big favorite in this race. And not that it was the jockey's fault per se, but he was just never in position to get into the winner's circle or really be a factor in that race. And I think it allowed a horse like Seminole Chief to take advantage. He's just going to have to run better against a field at this quality.
Got a really good trip when he won last time. That is for sure. You're right. He's going to have to really improve, but I'm not that surprised. Well, I should say not that surprised, but I understand what the connections are thinking, maybe wheeling him back on short rest. Only recently switched him to turf. He's run well in all 3 of those races. It feels like they found their surface for him. And I know he was right up on the pace last time, David, but this horse is super handy. When you go back to the race 2 starts back, he just sat very comfortably, even though he was sort of in and among horses almost that entire trip. Very comfortable. Once he got the room, he really ran in there. So I do feel like there could be a good trip coming for this horse at a price.
Let's throw up our picks for this grade 1 Maker's Mark Mile. And Mike, I think we're going to have the exact same exacta here. We're just keeping it pretty logical. I think we both acknowledge that Carl Spackler is way the horse to beat, but he's coming back off the layoff, and Integration just has that strong form, and it feels like he could really trip out in this race.
Yeah, always felt like Integration had the potential. I know he hasn't broken through that really big win yet, but I've always felt like he's had the potential to win, not just one of these races, David, but several of them. I think he's a really talented horse, and I do think he has a pretty good shot to upset Carl Spackler here.
1698 for Mike, I should say, and 1638 for me in the DRF Friday race of the day, the grade 1 Maker's Mark Mile. Good luck if you're playing the races later this week.